So we're going to head right down to feature match area.
Yeah, we've got Jarvis leading off here with an Underground Sea and a Ponder. It looks like he might have... Logan, I can't see how many cards he has in his hand, but, you know, the perfect kind of start for Delver, just trying to find the right cards off the bat. I'm not sure. Looks like he didn't like what he saw. He's going to shuffle and take a card. We're going to see what Adam's start looks like.
Yeah, and the more you sort of play Legacy, the more you're going to see that. And Jarvis probably played more Legacy than anyone. You see that players get much more picky about their ponders, right? If it isn't kind of exactly what you're looking for, where the cards aren't just, you know, your sideboard cards and that sort of matchup, you're going to take the shuffle and look for something better. You don't get stuck with mediocrity.
All right, so we got Adam's got a nice Guru Forest here. You know,
I think we have a
more than the Underground Sea on their side of the table, maybe. And an Exploration. And it looks like Jarvis is thinking about this. Nope, that's fine. As well as a Rashadan Port and
looks like a Pithing Needle.
A Pithing Needle.
We're gonna get confirmation on what those players are. It looks like Jarvis might be responding.
Yeah, Jarvis definitely thinking about that one for a second, but he says that's fine. Curious what he named.
I imagine Adam maybe named a fetch land just in the dark. That would be sort of my guess. He might also think Jarvis is playing some sort of combo deck. You know, led on Underground Sea Ponder. That's, you know, sort of something that you might see from like a Tempo Doomsday type deck or whatever. So Adam, you know, might know Jarvis has a propensity towards playing, you know, lots of different Legacy decks. So maybe just sort of naming something in the dark. We will get confirmation in a second about what that is as DRC is. Polluted Delta was the name.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know it wasn't Scalding Tarn because Jarvis used that to go get Volcanic Island and cast a Dragon's Rage Channeler. But if any Polluted Deltas are in the draw, then that'll be a little bit awkward for Jarvis. Adam here has gone with a Ghost Quarter and is now... Looks like he's just thinking about what he's going to do with this turn.
Yeah, and Ghost Quarter is very good against Jarvis here, as Jarvis has no basic lands this weekend.
Yeah, that's a bit of a liability when you're getting Ghost Quartered. Obviously, the basic land being good to get. The Ghost Quarter goes after the Volcanic Island, and Jarvis is using a Brainstorm in response. Surveilled a Sauron's Ransom, new card from... So he's using it for the shuffle, the Ghost Quarter Search, to kind of fix his Brainstorm here, which is a really heads-up move, even though it taps him out here.
Yeah, and this is probably a sign that Jarvis, you know, he wouldn't fire off the Brainstorm just to get the shuffle if, you know, his hand was sort of stacked over where he had maybe better things he could be doing. But it looks like Jarvis is still trying to find some stuff. And it might be a second land, you know, with the Pithing Needle naming Polluted Delta and getting that hit there. I saw that we have a Wasteland in hand. But it looks like we are going to be Force of Willing down the loam.
Yeah, with that Exploration in play, that loam represents Jarvis having no more lands in play, having not made a land drop this turn for Adam. So... Can't really let that one resolve if we want to get one, maybe two more spells out of this turn before we are in the lock a bit by Life from Loam plus Exploration. So it's like Dragon's Rage Channeler attacking for 3. For 3 here. Jarvis is delirious. And has a Badlands and another Dragon Rage Channeler. So this really is the kind of position where Jarvis is going to start riding these Dragon Rage Channelers as far as they'll take them, and Adam's gonna be playing defense here. With Life from Loam getting dredged and cast, targeting what looks like Wasteland and Ghost Quarter.
Yep, that's the new Wasteland from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, what's the skin on that one? What's the lore there, Mason?
What's the bonus name on that one?
Yeah.
I don't know bonus names. I just know the actual names. I feel like that's the mountain where they go in Lord of the Rings and they go, "You shall not pass," just like Jarvis shall not cast cards this game.
Yeah, Jarvis shall not have colored mana anymore. Yeah, so Jarvis's game, it looks like he has a Wasteland here, but his game has been reduced to attacking for 6 and hoping it's enough every turn. We'll see if this Wasteland winds up finding a good target to kind of make that work as Adam dredges Life from Loam again.
Yeah, and if you're a Lance fan here, you're going to be looking for Adam to find some card that can answer these DRCs, or something like Majuka Ball that might make them into smaller creatures and thus give Adam more time to set up something like a Dark Depths combo, as we are going to see the Wasteland go up to the Rashadan port.
Yeah, and it looks like, yeah, Jarvis with a heads up inside the draw step Wasteland of the Rashadan port, kind of getting the read that Adam didn't have any more mana sources. So
we're seeing
Adam couldn't
the
cast
deck
that
there
Life
from
from Loam to
Adam.
get more lands.
And yeah, and Jarvis wins despite Adam locking Jarvis out. Incredible stuff there. What a wild start to the game.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the real dynamic there in that matchup is neither player is going to want to let the other have mana. As you were seeing, that Life from the Loam, pulling back Wastelands and Ghost Quarters, keeping Jarvis off of mana. But at the same time, it costs you 2 every time to do that, and you're not developing your mana. So Jarvis really able to punish there. Looking at the sideboards, Adam has access to 4 Swords to Plowshares, 3 Endurance, 3 Force of Vigor, 2 Choke, 2 Fairy Macabre, and a Containment Priest. What of this do you think is coming in here, Mason?
So Endurance is going to be a card that's pretty good. That's going to stop the DRCs and the Murktides. That's going to be pretty good. So, that game we would have died for an Endurance. And then the 4 Swords of Plowshares also going to probably come in here. Just a really cheap, efficient way to answer Jarvis's threats. And we kind of saw Adam does a really good job of sort of preventing Jarvis from playing the game. But Jarvis is going to try and get underneath you as Delver, stick a couple threats, and then go the distance. So Adam's going to want the cards that can sort of interact on that angle.
Yeah, and I imagine we might not see so many of the sphere of resistances. There's a lot of things because the lands deck doesn't get to play, Force of Will, Daze, all this free kind of interaction on the stack that it just tries to keep combo decks to not have time denying their mana even more. But the Delver deck is a little bit better getting under that. Over to Jarvis's sideboard. Jarvis and most of these Delver decks, they have it's a lot of 1s and 2s. He's got 2 Thoughtseize, 2 Brazen Borrower, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Meltdown, a Grafdigger's Cage, a Hydroblast, a Null Rod, a Force of Negation, Surgical Extraction, Pyrokinesis, and a Plague in here. What of this are you thinking is going to be good for Jarvis to be looking at here?
So Surgical is a card we might actually see Jarvis go to due to cards like Life from the Loam as a way to sort of get through things. Brazen Borrower is another card that might end up coming in. This can answer a Merit Lage that gets played early or just in general. Also can be a backup threat. So I'm going to imagine those sort of cards are going to be what Jarvis sort of turns to early. You might also see Force of Negation for a very similar idea. Stop an early exploration or stop the Life from the Loam. Notably, this one exiles where Force of Will actually just counters. We saw in that game, from Jarvis. He countered the Loam, but it only bought him 1 turn of Loam not happening. Luckily, that's all he needed.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how, the Delver deck is always such a fine-tuned machine. It has all these cantrips to find all the right stuff at the right time. Whether or not they have the right stuff to handle a deck like lands, there's not Blood Moons here. There's not, the same kind of hate cards you'd see maybe out of some of the more controlling decks in the past. But really seeing how, like, things like Sauron's Ransom might not be so good. Things that cost a lot of mana. The game's going to really be about the small interactions early as it's going to play out.
Unholy Heat, Sauron's Ransom, Snuff Out. These are cards we're not super excited as Jarvis. Speaking of not being super excited, Jarvis not super excited to play his namesake this weekend, Abe. Only playing 2 Delvers, a sign of the times. This deck that was once dominated by this card, a card you couldn't imagine cutting, these days we're down to just 2. And it really speaks to sort of the space that Legacy is at, especially when you think about the card Orcish Bowmaster, right? DRC, at least you can play it, and then often, in the mid-game have her be bigger than Orcish Bowmaster could shoot down originally. But Delver is sort of susceptible to that card. It can be a huge liability.
Yeah, I think that as we see, over time, as we've seen more and more of these cards that are on the same power level enter the format, poor old Delver Secrets can only last shelf life of only 10 years before he starts to lose a little bit of ground. I think also it's interesting, the lands deck has changed itself over the years. It might just be benefiting the most this weekend as, Orcish Bowmasters has really taken the format by storm by being a deck that doesn't ever draw extra cards in the sense of actually drawing extra cards, right? Life from the Loam draws you 3 cards by drawing lands out of your graveyard, but you're replacing your draw with a dredge. You are putting those cards from your graveyard in your hand, not drawing them. And really, like Bowmasters is kind of the least effective it could be in a matchup like this. You know, there's not a single target, and there's not really a time you're ever going to get a trigger. So it's really interesting to see how that positioning is going to line up for them.
Agreed. And it looks like our players are finishing up shuffling. So we can head on down there. They are going to be done here in just a second. But yeah, it's been super exciting to see that first round. I can't believe almost how Jarvis actually got away with that game, right? That Force of Will and the first cast Life of the Loam looked to be such a desperate play, but it gave Jarvis just the amount of time he needed to sort of go the distance and beat Adam here in a game that looked to be kind of over for Jarvis, you know, if you were just kind of half watching.
Yeah, and I mean, this speaks to just how good Jarvis is at Legacy and how much he knows about what he's doing in the format, especially in this matchup, is that, you know, things like he got Ghost Quartered, he immediately knew, I'm firing off this Brainstorm, I need to find the right cards, my hand's not in the right place, I just need to dig, you know, without really thinking about it. Same way that Life Loam gets cast, without a second thought, he's like, this is where I'm spending my Force of Will, this game is just about getting the clock down and riding it out, and you know, that kind of decisiveness around what are really, really crucial, you know, and weird seeming decisions, right? Life Loam, why am I going to counter it? They're just going to dredge it back and cast it again. Really showing his mastery with that. As we see Adam here taking a mulligan down to 6. It looks like Jarvis might still be thinking.
Yeah, he's definitely sort of taking the thought there. His hand, it looks like he put it down. Looks like he's good to keep. Did see a Dragon Rage Channeler, a Murktide, a Force of Will, and a Force of Negation, but only one land. So if Adam, you know, has like another Rashad Port or Ghost Quarter or Wasteland, Jarvis is going to be off mana very quickly in this hand.
Yeah, I think we're bound to see, regardless of how the game goes, for Jarvis to only be spending mana for the first few turns. You know, he's not going to have another opportunity to have mana to spend. And so it's really going to be a matter of where is he going to be on board by the time Adam sets up, you know, a bit of that mana denial versus where Adam's able to get the game once Jarvis has things on board. As we see Adam lead on a Mox Diamond, discarding what looks to be, I'm not sure. Mason, do you know what that land is?
I believe that's one of the Lord of the Rings lands, but it might actually be an altar. This one is it's Lord of the Rings something, I think, actually, but I'm not 100% sure. As a force hits the sphere of resistance, they've got me on that one. I'm normally on top of these things, but that one I think is just some weird Lord of the Rings card I've never seen. It might be Maze of Ith, but that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, so Adam trying to use that mana advantage to get ahead with a sphere of resistance and lock Jarvis up. Meanwhile, Adam has a Wasteland for that Volcanic Island, and Jarvis has a Force of Negation for that Life Loam. Exiling, like you were saying, we're talking about sideboarding. Really a big part of things is Adam has his 2 mana and Jarvis has his none, and we're off to the races here as Dragon Rage Channel comes across for a nice point of damage. And this is really, you know, what I was talking about, where the game is going to be about what they can get down before it all shakes out. And Adam has, looks to be another Wasteland here and a Sphere of Resistance.
Yeah, and playing his land first, making sure to play around Daze here. Doesn't want to get got in a position like this. And this is like sort of a big part of the matchup too, where Jarvis having that force on the Loam, Adam probably kept his hand because it was a couple, you know, strip mines in the Loam. And Loam sort of is, like we mentioned, the draw engine of the land stack. So Jarvis getting a fight over that is sort of like, you know, imagine it's like fighting over some sort of, you know, big draw spell like Expressive Iteration or the One Ring, essentially. It is not that far off in the land stack from being the ring.
Yeah. Life Loam is drawing 3 cards a turn here. As Jarvis is drawing 3 cards of his own for this Brainstorm he's casting in response to the Sphere, which I imagine is a signal that it's just going to resolve, making it so that Jarvis is even more so under the tax. You know, everything's going to cost more and he's going to have less to pay. So looks like he's putting back Daze in a land.
Yeah, he notably has Meltdown in hand. So it does have an answer to the Sphere if we can ever get to the mana, but getting to the mana might be the harder part. As it is untapped, which makes me think that it actually might be Dark Depths in play and not... Although I guess if it was Dark Depths, it would have counters on it. If it was a Wasteland, I imagine Adam would have fired off the Wasteland on the Volcanic Island.
Yeah, it could be... Maybe it is Mazabith. Based on... Like, I don't think we've gone to combat here. No. Either way, we're casting Meltdown for X equals 0 there, paying through Spheres just to kill that Mox Diamond, keeping Adam off of mana.
Oh, it's Ancient
Tomb. It might be Ancient Tomb. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh.
Crucible of Worlds. Oh, which can't be cast.
Yeah, we have the sphere does affect... Yeah, it's not like the thorns or anything like that, or any one-sided things. That is, going to give you a small little warning, but, honest mistake from everyone involved here. Jarvis is going to swing in for 1. And if Adam can find that land, he's going to be in a pretty good spot because we have some juicy land still in our graveyard.
Yeah, I mean, Crucible World's the original Ren and 6. As Jarvis just continues to draw and attack with this Dragon's Rage Channeler. He has that Daze from the Brainstorm, looks like a Surgical Extraction as well. And that Daze is, really, really potent because of the Sphere of Resistance. That Crucible Worlds is a huge threat to Jarvis's plan. And without the mana to cast it, there's not going to be another way for him to get one ahead.
Yeah, and we see Endurance Pitch Endurance.
Yeah, Endurance Pitch Endurance just to slow down Jarvis's clock. Really the Dragon's Rage Channeler, so much pressure when what Adam needs is time, especially with that Ancient Tomb there. He's got a lot to think about if we're taking another draw step. Not looking too happy about it.
I love Jarvis's patience here. You saw him start to play a DRC, then you realized, wait, there's Crucible from Adam's side. I'm going to lose the game if Crucible hits. I just want to hold up this Daze and make this game not change. I'm ahead. I don't need to sort of take a risk here. If I find a land, I can play my DRC later. But for now, I'm good to just keep attacking. My opponent can't do much to their own sphere, as we are going to see.
It's like Adam's casting a Swords to Plowshares, paying 2 life here. Forcing some action out of Jarvis, who is going to cast Surgical Extraction in response. Looks like we're targeting...
Yeah, Jarvis does get a Surveil, so you see him sort of taking a look at their graveyard before he surveils. That way he can figure out what he wants. Looks like Wasteland was the pick.
Getting a chance to look at Adam's hand of Crucible Mox Diamond. So this is where, Jarvis maybe just trying to get the Surveil, maybe trying to just get a picture on what Adam's hand looks like with these unknown draws. Adam, again, just under a little bit too much pressure from even just the 1/1 Dragon's Rage Channeler with that Ancient Tomb involved for him to feel like he has to cast the Swords to Plowshares. If you're Adam here, Mason, what are you thinking about what it is you need to draw to get this game back under your control?
Yeah, so I think step 1 is probably going to need a land so we can start casting more of our cards, or, now that the Dragon Rage Channel is off the board, we have a little bit more time to not worry about having to answer pressure. Now, we know in the boost, Jarvis has another threat. So Adam's going to want another Swords or maybe his last copy of Endurance to just block the Dragon Rage Channeler. But the number one thing Adam wants is just an untapped land that produces mana so he can get Crucible in play and then start getting some of those other lands from his graveyard and then have other things that he can buy because he's going to want to find Dark Depths sooner than later because Jarvis has got his life total really low and some bolts, which maybe Jarvis cut a little bit on, could close the game out here for Adam as Adam is playing a Misty. So we are out underneath the sphere.
Yeah, we are going to have the opportunity here to cast this Crucible of Worlds, choosing to play the Misty rather than maybe expose himself by casting the Mox Diamond, first, kind of get that other man first. But he's on a clock of his own. He's really got to get something going for him to get ahead of Jarvis. Without a life from the loam, this Crucible is representing, his way back into dominant position in this game. But I wonder how wary he's going to be of Daze.
Yeah, it looks like Adam is past the turn, so Adam is very much aware of Daze, not willing to play into it.
Yeah, I mean, Jarvis getting really rewarded for not, like you were saying before, not taking the time to cast his spells before he'd be able to protect himself from a follow-up, right? Even the threat of Daze here for Adam means that he can't cast this Crucible of Worlds, which really does change the whole way the game is going. Getting that down, having access to his whole graveyard full of lands, it does open up open up his game plan. He gets to stop taking damage to this Ancient Tomb. He gets to deny Jarvis the ability to continue to develop his board. But kind of in a tough spot here as he's passing back yet again, and Jarvis is taking another draw step here with a Dragon's Rage Channeler in play. Just coming across for one. The clock is ticking as every turn Adam gets closer and closer to not having that Ancient Tomb, being stuck under his own sphere. It's not where you want to be as a lands player.
Yeah, Adam may love his wife, but I love the way Jarvis has been playing this game, as we're going to see the Sauron's Ransom cast here. And this is a powerful new card we can pull up on the screen here. It's basically a mini Fact Perfection, where we're going to put 2 piles, one face up, one face down, and then we're going to have the Ring Tempts You. So that's going to basically give the... Oh, no, it looks like we're actually casting Brazen Borrower, which is going to present just about lethal here.
Mason, I can't believe you're going to do the classic thing of I want to draw cards more than I want to win the game.
Well, I mean, that's just more winning. You're winning by so much more, and Jarvis loves to be on the game. So there's a Swords of Plowshare here on the Brazen Borrower. A great draw for Adam.
Yeah, keeping Adam in the game, but the fact that Jarvis is now at, has access to more, or I guess as much mana as Adam, with more spells that are going to be relevant. As now he's casting Sauron's Ransom. Now it's time to draw some cards. The ever-awaited moment. And I believe he's probably looking to get Delirium off of this cast as the Ring tempts Jarvis, and we're going to see Adam play a little sub game of deciding what Jarvis gets to choose.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'd not thought about Dragon Rage Channeler with Sauron's Ransom in this context, but if you surveil top and they don't put that card in the pile, like the face up pile, one of the face down cards.
Oh my god.
so it can get a little tricky. Kind of a cool thing here, as Jarvis says his own makeshift the Ring Tempts You type thing here. He actually cut the thing in half, as you can tell. A pretty cool way to do it, and not seen players do that yet.
Yeah, I think if I were gonna have the Ring tempt me in paper at like a legacy tournament like this, I might bring. You've seen on Arena they have the yellow halo.
Mm-hmm.
I would just get a yellow halo of my own to put on my cards. I think it's a really good UI. So we're going to see a pile of 1 and 3, just deciding which one's going to be face up, it looks like. No, Adam going back into the tank. This is really...
Yeah, I think Adam thought both piles were face down. I think is what happened here.
Oh.
Which is easy. It's easy to misread the card and think it does do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is like the most fun, possibly least important decision of the game going on here. But anytime you get the chance to split a Fact or Fiction, anything like it, it's just a good time. So we have 2 Mishra's Baubles going to the graveyard for Jarvis, which does not yield him Delirium just yet. Keeping Adam's Ancient Tomb online for 1 more activation. But Jarvis here with a hand full of Dazes, Brainstorms. I'm not sure what it is Adam needs something right here if he's going to get, back into this game. He's need to find a way to get this Dragon Rage Channeler off the table right now. Another Swords to Plowshares. You could pay for 2 Dazes. But this thing is going to turn off so much of his mana that it's going to be a hard one to get back into from here.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, if Jarvis connects with this Dragon Rage Channeler here for the last little point of damage before we can't be activating our Ancient Tombs anymore, it's going to be a huge implication because Adam is at 3. Our electrical is a little bit behind. We're sorry about that. But, Jarvis has access to so much mana. The Sphere is really hurting Adam more than Jarvis, and Jarvis proving he is the lands master in the 1v1 with more lands in play than Adam. As we're going to this Brainstorm, we see Jarvis just making sure there's nothing that can get him at the last second, just making sure his hand is perfectly set up. Jarvis knows what the opponent can do, knows he's not under any threat of Merit Lage, and just needs to cover any weird corner cases that could pop up. And he has the Daze and the Force to do it. And it's going to be a good spot seeing the Daze at the graveyard. Also trying to maybe get to Delirium.
Yeah, I was going to say, getting to Delirium here does just present lethal immediately. So I think that Jarvis, Brainstorm, if he has a sorcery in hand, a creature in hand, and then another spell to cast, that instantly gets him there. Just a lot of options for Jarvis here to either be, making his hand that much better, insulated against what Adam could draw, or just ending the game right here. So the amount he's thinking about it, I don't imagine he's going to get Delirium, but Jarvis is a very, very You know, he's a very, very tight player who makes sure that he's 100% on all these decisions before he commits. So
I believe the word
he
we
would double
call
check
him
his
is
math every time.
methodical. He's a methodical player.
All right, and Delver of Secrets coming down, presenting lethal through anything here. One removal spell is not going to cut it. Adam's taking this draw step.
We do have the
Not a
Urza
Terminus.
construct, but we can't activate the Ancient Tomb to do all of this. And I think that's all she wrote for old Adam.
Yeah, I think we're checking the math. We're asking ourselves where it went wrong, and we are packing it up. So that is 2-0 for Jarvis in what is traditionally, you know, just a really hard matchup.
Yeah, we sort of showed, like you mentioned, how Jarvis, you know, known for playing lands, also just known for playing Legacy in general, has a lot of familiarity with the format and knew exactly how to play those games. You know, like we were talking about, immediately under the gun, behind on mana, everything was going poorly for Jarvis sort of in those first turns, but he had just the right spells and knew just how to sequence them to get out from underneath that. And then in game 2 showed, hey, I know exactly what to fight over. I'm going to force negation the cards that matter. I can play this sphere. I'm not going to sort of, you know, give myself a chance to die by playing this DRC a bit early, which I think a lot of players would be very tempted to just sort of end the game. And maybe something terrible could have happened to Jarvis there because he didn't leave up his Daze. Instead, played a slow, methodical game and got heavily rewarded for it. We are going to try and get Jarvis in the booth and sort of talk to us about his deck selection this week and this event so far. But, Abe, first round of NRG coverage in the booth here, you know, how you feeling after that happened? Was that not a great first start to it?
I mean, that was just a textbook example of why Legacy is a format that, you know, it's just always good to have around, because the people who really understand it and the players who really get it, they do some really, really impressive things. You know, every little interaction, all of it adds up, all of it matters. And Jarvis really putting that on display. His excessive mastery of the format, understanding what all the decks are about, inside and out, really showing what it takes to be that Delver pilot who, you know, wins the hard matchups. And it was just a fantastic entry to see my friend Jarvis take one down.
Yeah, and Jarvis is going to be ready in just a second. He's just walking over in the interview. Had to put away, you know, he had all those little knickknacks, like the cut up the ring Tempshu card, clearly prepared. And, you know, this is sort of, you know, Jarvis's wheelhouse. I'm curious, actually. I don't know if Jarvis, he played a team event yesterday, but I don't know if he was the Legacy seat. I'm going to have to ask him about that there, because, you know, it is one of those situations where a lot of Jarvis's friends also play a lot of Legacy. So it's like, you know, when it comes time for the team tournament, everyone sort of wants that seat, you know. It's like, okay, well, who's going to have to play Pioneer? You know, pretty fun stuff going on. But today we have all the Legacy action happening for you. And this is all day, by the way. So you want to click that follow button. You don't want to miss any of the upcoming rounds. I believe we have 8 of them, and then our top 8 is all today. So that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, jam-packed Sunday of Legacy coverage like it's 2014, honestly. This is what I remember growing up on coverage-wise. It's just good for the soul, Mason.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Yeah. And we get to watch Ponders like it's 2014 and take forever. The player, you know, Ponders a card, no matter how good you get, you have to always think about it. You have to always work through it. That means as commentators, we always have to sit there and watch it. As I think Jarvis is just about ready. I can see him sitting down. We sort of having our eye on the cot. Then let's go straight to Jarvis, as he does seem to be ready. Jarvis, congratulations on winning round 1 here in the booth with Mason and Abe here. How do you feel after that win?
Well, I feel really justified because I've gone on Twitter saying the Sphere land deck is unplayable. So I think we just saw a lot of the structural issues with the Sphere lands deck in that matchup. Suppose those spheres are punching fires and he's red-green instead of green-white. I think that matchup is so much harder for me, you know, based on deck construction. Both my hands were pretty good. Like, DRC was great. I think game 1, he just missed the fact that I could waste him draw step after he dredged loam, which like ended the game, I think, on the spot. I think maybe some people would miss that play, but I've played a lot with both decks.
Yeah, that was something we were talking about in the booth here, Jarvis, is how you, of all the Delver players to run up against in the tournament, probably you have the most experience from either side of the matchup. And seeing, you know, things like, you know, brainstorming response to that Ghost Quarter to get the shuffle in game 1, as well as, you know, fighting, like forcing, without even a hesitation, forcing that first life from the loam cast to stay in the game. Really just, is there anything, you know, outside of just how those games played out where you felt like you were maybe understanding the game on a better level?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. I played a Legacy LCQ on MTGO recently with lands with, Punching Fire and Saga, but I ran to Mental Misstep, aka Stefan Schutz, playing this sort of Grixis deck, and he beat me in 3 games. I was so impressed. I'm just like, I'm gonna go back to Grixis Delver. He actually played Grixis Delverless, but I'm just like, I think the mana curve doesn't quite work out if you play Grixis Delverless, so I put 2 Delvers back in the deck. I think they're definitely the worst creature in the deck, but I just wanted to have enough creatures,
For sure. Speaking of in the deck, how has Sauron Ransom been? This is one of the new cards from Lord of the Rings. Orcish Bowmasters, obviously, card everyone had their eye on. You're rocking 4 of those this weekend. But Sauron's Ransom seemed to be pretty good there. Have you played much of that card? Is that something you're testing out this weekend? What's the tea?
So one of the reasons I was impressed with Stefan's deck was he did play 2 Sauron's Ransom, and they were very impressive in the games. Obviously, they're going to be good in grindy matchups. They're not going to be good versus unfair decks, but, as the old saying goes, it's a blue card. You can pitch it to force. It's not a hard sell. Also, I think it just lets you get around a lot of the Bowmaster wars because it doesn't actually draw cards. So you can actually just cast it into a known or maybe suspected Bowmaster and try to pull hit it that way. I would say that the Delver mirrors nowadays are more grindy. So having a card advantage card like that can be helpful.
Awesome. And so here's a question for you. Sort of the follow-up to that is, by you saying that, sort of hints to that maybe you think Delver decks are sort of back on top of being the best deck. Maybe they never really left, but the consensus was a little bit that Delver was falling down a little bit recently. But since Orcish Bowmaster came back, is that sort of the number one thing you're thinking about is playing Delver Mirror? Sort of like that's the thing you're worried about?
So it's funny you bring that up. I did try the Jeskai 4th Erling Gas Delver deck. One of my issues with that card is that it implies that you're going to maintain complete board control over the game for the entire game. So it's kind of hard card to play into other fair creature decks sometimes because it's a disaster. If you take the Monarch, they kill, they play a Bowmaster and kill 2 of your creatures and take the Monarch back. Then you have to wrest it back from them. The game becomes very volatile. So I didn't really like that testing the Jeskai Delver deck. But of course, that card is very powerful. If you cast it for 1 and then you Sanctuary back, cast it for 4, your opponent probably just dies to the Fireball,
Mm-hmm. Makes total sense. Well, Jarvis, we're going to let you go. We have a backup match we want to get to, and we want you to have some time to relax with your round. So thank you so much for coming out to the event, and we'll surely see you around more across this weekend.
Thank you.
Speaking of the backup match, Abe, we have Nicole Dubin playing Initiative. So we're going to go straight down to that feature match. So this was the plan, Twitch chat. We know you're scared of the Initiative. Don't worry. We're going to talk through it together. We're going to work on it. It's not going to be a big deal. We've got the Initiative on camera now. That way we don't have to worry about it until top 8 again, okay? As we do see a turn 1 Comet. Stellar the Comet upplayed.
We were all ready to talk about the Initiative. Now we've got to talk about some unset cards, Mason. What's Comet do? Can you give us the breakdown here?
I do know Comet. So Comet has a loyalty of 5 and then has a 0 in the activate, and you roll a dice. The outcome of the dice roll depends on what ability you get. So if you get a 1 or a 2, you create some squirrels. If you get a 3, you then return a card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. A 4 or a 5, it deals damage equal to the loyalty counters to target creature or player. Then you -2 on Comet here. And then a 6 is you get to +1 and you redo it again. So we're going to see Comet deal 3 damage here and then lose 2 loyalty counters. So
just in the first 2 turns here, Comet has dealt 8 damage off these 2 rolls of 5.
Yeah, and that's pretty good in your Initiative Stompy deck. The beatdowns!
Oh man, this is the beatdowns. This is magic.
Yes, as we do see a Containment Priest flashing at the end of turn here for Lee.
And Lee swordsing the Simian Spirit Guide, taking out the Comet. So Dubin back to quite literally square 0. Got no permanents left, but we have dealt quite a bit of damage as Kai has 2 lands as Containment Priest and is just continuing to play planes and do what Death and Taxes does best.
Make the game grind out. And for Kai, this was sort of an important couple of turns here because Nicole getting that turn 1 Comet Stellar Pup, had Nicole landed, on the 1 or the 2 and gone some squirrels or heaven forbid some 6s and just got to, run back multiple rolls, the game could have been out of reach. But if you're, a Lee fan, just taking 8 damage is not your favorite thing against a Stompy deck, but something you can definitely beat. And when the game's about the battlefield, Lee can fight those fights. And it looks like they're taking a look at the graveyard just to see what's in there, just to get an idea. Oh, Abe, do you know this card?
No, enlighten me, Mason.
So, this is Canopix Scarab Scorn. This is a new one from Death and Taxes players. So if you haven't seen this one before, it's from Warhammer. It's a 4-mana 1/1 with flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you exile target player's graveyard for each artifact and land card. This way, you create a 1/1 colorless insect. So this is a great way to sort of generate a lot of bodies. We're seeing it, you know, Lotus Petal and the land there. And something we can flicker with Yorion later. Also something we can tutor off our Recruiter of the Guard. So been a card that sort of has been picking up in Death and Taxes deck and has been very good.
All right, and Nicole casting and getting the initiative.
Yes.
So it looks like Nicole's going to go get a basic land, as you do when you gain the initiative. A little bit dangerous to be gaining the initiative here when you are behind on board in creatures.
Yeah.
Just always a dangerous thing to be passing that up. Same with the Monarch, as Flicker Wisp takes out, or at least for the turn, Nicole's creature, and gets the initiative back. So,
yeah, and then Flicker Wisp gets rid of the Caves of Chaos Adventurer there for Nicole. And Nicole's sort of in a position, like you mentioned, getting the initiative to Lee is awful, but also just sitting there and not doing anything and getting attacked on board is just as bad. So there were some hopes of maybe blocking, sort of mounting a comeback, but now Nicole is really far behind against the Death and Taxes deck, and we're going to actually pick this up and go to game number 2. Now, this is some sideboard action we get to see here and to see how Nicole might fix her matchup.
Yeah, and we've got, in Nicole's sideboard, she's got 4 Swords Plowshares, 4 Fairy Macabre, 2 Containment Priests, 2 Loran of the Third Path, 2 Mags of the Moon, and an Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn. What of this are you really thinking about bringing in if you're Nicole?
Well, if you bring an Emrakul and you can cast it, you probably win the game. But it's a little bit of a big ass, so I'm going to not do that one for right now. But Swords of Plowshare is something we might see Nicole turn towards in some numbers. It is a battle over the battlefield, and the opponent's deck, Lee, has some really high-impact cards. So you maybe want a couple of those for sure. And then Lorraine, the Third Path, there's also a lot of high-impact equipment. So things like Umasawa's Jitte is going to be on the other side of the battlefield, and we want to make sure to not die to those sort of things. There's also Aether Vials we can catch. So those are going to be things that we want to put in. Cards like Chalice of the Void aren't super great in this matchup. Things like Cavern Souls are on the other side. Flicker Wisp can reset it. Aether Vial can also be a problem. So we're probably going to see those get cut and then bring in these a little bit more high-impact sideboard cards.
Yeah, and over to Kai's deck, we've got obviously the Yorion in the sideboard, so that we can pick that up as our companion. But there's now we've got a Sanctum Prelate, Mindbreak Trap, Kataki, Grafdigger's Cage, Fairy Macabre, Emrakul, the Aeon's Torn of their own. So we could see an Emrakul mirror here,
Yes.
potentially. 2 Circle Distraction, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Deafening Silence, 2 Council's Judgment. What, if any of this, are you thinking about on the D&T side there, Mason?
I like Council's Judgment as the main go-to. That's the one I'm sort of slamming. Just a 3-mana removal spell. Like I said, this game is going to be about the battlefield, and that one's really good. Besides that, there's not too much. There might be some one-ofs in our deck that, you know, I'm sort of quickly scanning over the 80 cards, and maybe there's another thing that isn't super great when to sideboard out. But I think for the most part, Lee is fairly prepared for this matchup. Just needs to make sure not to fall behind too early, just like we saw that Comet Stellar Pup. Now, we're going to go into game number 3 because we're a little bit low on time of the round. Nicole wins game 2 pretty quickly, so we're not going to show that round of the future, unfortunately. But let's get into game number 3 real quick here, Abe, to see what we can get going on here.
Yes, all the marbles with Kai on the play, and it looks like potentially taking a mulligan here is Nicole, putting back 1 card, and we're going to be underway with a Plains and an Aether Vial from Kai.
Just about the best start you can get from the Death and Taxes deck is this. Aether Vial is just going to let you get your hand down quicker and then use some of your utility lands like Rashadan Port, and we'll be able to Wasteland and still progress to the battlefield. Also very powerful with Yorion. Then you could sort of, and we got turn 1, the initiative of the Caves of Chaos Adventurer enters the battlefield for Nicole.
Yeah, and Caves of Chaos Adventurer, a 5/3 trample here on turn 1 that gives the initiative. When it attacks, Nicole's going to exile the top card of their library. If they've completed the dungeon, they can play it without paying a cast. Otherwise, they can just play it this turn. So going to be pulling ahead on cards if this doesn't get answered, in addition to just having the initiative. as Kai does have a Swords to Plowshares to mitigate that effect, but a blistering start for Nicole, having 4 mana on turn 1 and getting her own instance of a Planeswalker effectively here in the power of the initiative as we go to the Lost Well in the Undercity and are scrying 2 in our upkeep before we draw. So really just going to be able to find that next threat as Nicole is, even just here on turn 2, already in her mid game, it feels like.
Yeah, and this is one of the big strengths of the Boros Initiative deck is it sort of has those explosive starts, and there are a lot of decks in Legacy that can't really beat that. And, they maybe don't have enough creature interaction to get back the initiative from the opponent to sort of steal it, but it can be very, very powerful, as Kai is going to attack with the Mother of Runes, a rarely seen thing, but when you get to guarantee your land drop here, which you were missing before, and get the initiative, you're willing to take the risk.
Yeah, Mother of Runes getting in the red zone has always got to be for a good reason. That card obviously one of the best of all time when it comes to being a problem for the opponent. But using the combat step here to take the initiative himself is Kai. As Kai has another Aether Vial and is now kind of going to be in the position of sitting and waiting it out, kind of what Death and Taxes does best in my opinion. But Nicole's going to take back the initiative here with what's that? Seasoned Dungeoneer?
Seasoned Dungeoneer, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a 3/4. Gonna get us the initiative here. I don't know. When we gain the initiative, do we go through the dungeon? Mason, are you aware?
I don't believe so. I think you just get it back. As we are going to see a Spirit of the Labyrinth enter the play off this Aether Vial. And it looks like Lee has both Flicker Wisp and Solitude in hand.
Yeah, and to top off that Swords to Plowshares that just took out the Dungeoneer, this is the exact position that Kai wants to be in, right? All that Nicole's deck is really going to be able to do from here is continue to present creatures that are going to try to take over the game on their own. And Kai with multiple ways to answer just a single creature while still having pressure in play. This the Spirit of Labyrinth, as well as eventually, this Aether Vial could just tick up to 5, or set that Solitude down, get that Flicker Wisp in, and combat does a lot of damage over time, as I'm sure you're familiar, Mason.
I am. And we do see Mother of Runes actually in the red zone, and that is, a good sign to say like Lee is about attacking this game and putting Nicole on the back foot here.
Yeah, Lee understanding that it is a matter of, while they do have removal spells, those are only going to answer so many of Nicole's draws. And so you're going to want to make sure that you are putting Nicole under pressure here to make the game over before Nicole can set up a spot to be back in the driver's seat. As we see Fable of the Mirror Breaker off of, looks like a Cavern of Souls. The Flicker is just taking out that token. This is exactly what I'm talking about as far as just answering everything Nicole does for a couple turns and attacking. It is truly the Death and Taxes way.
Yes. Yeah, and you're seeing Lee even take up the 1 Aether Vial to 4. Probably going to go to 5. We could use this treasure, put Yorion in our hand too, and then, start vialing in Solitudes and vialing in Yorion. Nicole's game is very quickly slipping away from her, and you sort of saw why Lee was able to expose the Mother Runes last turn, because we had the Flicker Wisp in hand to protect her had Nicole had an answer for that mom. And now Nicole's going to need to mount something, maybe like a Comet Stellar Pupson that can generate a lot of advantage. We roll a couple 6s in a row, Abe, we can just dome Lee out of this game. Up, 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 roll some 5s, boop, 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 shoot him down. So,
yeah, Comet could do anything at any time. You don't want to count that dog out. As we see Solitude in the beginning of combat here, forcing the Mother of Runes to be used on itself and providing Nicole with a life-linking creature, making it so maybe combat is not going to be... Oh, is this in the upkeep?
This is
okay. We're in the upkeep. Yeah. We Solituded try to Solitude the Mother of Runes. So now Solitude holding down the fort for Nicole as Kai does tick that vial up to 5. We might see... We know the Yorion's in hand. That can do quite a bit here. We also know about a Solitude, but...
Yeah, Yorion Caracas set up, Abe.
Oh.
Put it back in the hand and vial it in. Put it back in the hand, vial it in. We got a lot of value coming in. We got our own Solitude, too.
Oh, and we can't forget that, Kai has had the initiative this whole time. Just entered the portion of the dungeon here in the Undercity where they got a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with Menace. And next turn, if they still have the initiative, they're going to get to reveal the top 10 cards of their library, put a creature among them onto the battlefield with 3 counters on it. That creature's going to have hexproof until their next turn, and then shuffle. So we are... Death and Taxes is doing everything Death and Taxes loves to do. Just to get a little bit ahead of you every turn, and we are close to the pinnacle. Not only have we taken the initiative from our opponent, we're about to complete the dungeon before them, and looping this Yorion for as much fun as we want.
Yep.
It's a good time to be Kai.
It's a great time, yeah. And, Nicole knows Kai's last card in hand is Yorion and knows, like, no matter what I sort of do here, I'm going to get attacked in the air. The Yorion's going to flicker the Solitude. Okay, so this Solitude, Nicole last turn setting up this sort of situation actually matter. She gets one shot before Mother of Runes actually starts protecting everything again. So Nicole's figured out, do I fight over the Mom or do I fight over the Solitude that's going to start getting flickered over and over again?
Yeah, and also the last opportunity to do this with the Yorion not protecting it as well, right? We know the Yorion's the last card in hand, but that Aether Vial on 5 being tapped to put that Solitude in on Kai's turn means that, this is our only opportunity. So we see that be all of Nicole's turn as Kai goes to Value Town, goes through the Throne of Dead 3.
Yeah, as we are going to reveal the top 10, we can put a creature in play, like you mentioned. It looks like it's going to be a Flicker Wisp. Congratulations for Kai.
Flicker Wisps and Aether Vials.
Yeah, we were going to hit all lands. So, Nicole's hopes of winning was basically, Kai draws a bunch of lands in a row, and Kai was like, no, that's not happening today.
Yeah, and this is, I'm not going to... Anything could happen. We were just talking about Comet as possibly the card that undoes it all. Anything's possible when you start rolling the dice. But I think we're going to need to see exactly how much is possible when you start rolling the dice for this game to go in Nicole's favor. As I believe we're just shy of a lethal attack from Kai here, but we are, this is going to be likely Nicole's last draw step on her turn here.
Yeah, and it looks like Kai maybe missed the Flicker Wisp trigger. Maybe he's thinking about it a little hard to know exactly here. There's some discussion, I think, about maybe what life totals are. A little bit of thinking here. As it is looking like...
Well, we were discussing where we were in the turn, because we were in the upkeep for the initiative, and now have we taken a draw step?
Sure. Very easy to sort of get lost, especially when you're doing so many things. You don't do a lot normally in your upkeep. As Stoneforge Mystic was the draw.
Yeah, what are you going to grab here if you're Kai? Off your Stoneforge Mystic.
I think I'm probably just grabbing Jit, although I could see a world where it's like, I'm not sure how I lose this game unless something really weird happens. So I'm going to grab Cauldron and just make it like impossible for Nicole to actually take over the game. As Cauldron was the grab.
Yeah, and I mean, with the Yorion and the Karakas, we are just going to have access to all of our equipment should this game go on long enough for any of them to enter play. It's really just a matter of preference, I feel like. What makes you feel the happiest to have in your hand?
It's true. And it looks like we're sizing up attacks here, seeing what we can do. The Reflection of Kiki Jiki with Solitude does threaten to actually be some way to start to pull back in, but the Yorion with the Vial that we all know about makes that a lot harder, as Nicole is going to fall to 1 here. And looks like we are going to put in this Yorion, and I imagine we're just going to flicker, these 3 cards. Solitude, the opposing Solitude, Flicker Wisp, the Reflection. That way it's back to the front side as Fable, the Mirror Breaker, and then go grab your Jitte.
And also importantly, back to the front side is Fable, the Mirror Breaker in Nicole's end step. So not going to have access to that token in combat or anything this turn. But it looks like maybe Solitude on the Reflection, Flicker Wisping the Plateau. End searching is what Kai's going to go for.
Yeah, it looks to be probably we're going to show them like, we got the Adventurer's Torch. Okay, so that's going to get us the initiative again. Sorry, the Trailblazer's Torch. Excuse me. I misspoke.
That way we can go ahead and go through the dungeon again.
Yeah. And I don't hate this line actually of Flicker Wisping down a lane. I kind of wish it was City of Traders. I get that we want to pop City of Traders, but I feel like Comet's only going to win as Nicole does extend the hand, and Lee moves on to 1-0. So congratulations there to Lee. What a wild first round we had there of Legacy Ave, and we have so much more to show you today. But we are close to time in the round, so we're going to take a quick little break here. So don't leave. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Click the follow button, and we'll have some more legacy action for you just around the corner.